Hello. We're going to start this lesson with a question. How do you describe and explain what something is? Well, in your own language, this might be quite easy because you have the vocabulary and the words to describe and explain, and the people you're talking to will understand you. In English, though, how can you explain what something is or where something is and what it's for if you don't have the specific vocabulary? In this lesson, we're going to be looking at a way that you can use English grammar to produce sentences that will help to explain to people and describe places, things, times, and also possessions, the things that people have. We call these sort of sentence pieces relative clauses, and there are two kinds as well as omission. And we're going to start with defining relative clauses. When we use the term defining relative clause, we mean a part of a sentence that says exactly what something is, even if we don't have specific vocabulary. For example, it's a thing which you use to clean your teeth with, or it's a thing with which you use to clean your teeth. Now, hopefully you'll realize this is what's called a toothbrush, the thing which we use to clean our teeth with. Things that you will also notice is the preposition with. Now, you've got two options here. You can either put it at the end of the sentence, or you can put it before the relative clause. Both are fine. I would say in modern English, you would do this more than this. This is using the preposition with the relative clause is a bit more formal, a bit more old-fashioned. But as you can see here, when we're describing things, we use which. He's the man who works for my father. Now there's no prepositions here, so there's nothing to worry about in terms of where a preposition goes in a sentence. And as you can see here, we're describing the man, who he is, and what he does. So when we're talking about people, we use who. She's the woman that owns this car. Now, the strange thing about relative clauses is sometimes you can use that instead of them. For example, with which. It's a thing that you use to clean your teeth with. That's fine, it's the same as which, it's just an alternative. And with people, she's the woman that owns this car. It's the same as using who. This is the place where I was born. So as you can see with this relative clause, we're using the word where to describe the place. It's the time when I was very happy. So here we're defining, we're specifically referring to the time by using the word when. He's the man whose children are crazy. Now, the relative clause whose is a little bit different. We're talking about ownership, possessions. In this case, we're defining the children who belong to the man, and we're giving some information about them, the children who are crazy. So far in the lesson, we've looked at how we use defining relative clauses to explain exactly what something is. Now we're going to look at something that's called non-defining relative clauses. We can use these to add extra information to sentences. Now, they behave very similarly to defining relative clauses in that we use which to describe things, we use who to describe people, we use where for places, when for times, and whose for possessions, the things that people own. Now, if we have a look at some example sentences, it will make it clearer what I mean by adding extra information to sentences. For example, this is the city which is famous for its food that we lived in. Now, you'll notice we've got some punctuation here. The punctuation, i.e. the two commas, represent the extra information we want to add to the sentence. So if we look at this sentence here, we can see this is the city that we lived in. That sentence works fine, and we use punctuation and a relative clause to add some extra information about this city. So really, by using a non-defining relative clause, you turn two sentences into one sentence. And a sentence with more information in it is basically a better sentence. One thing to watch out for would be the fact that which cannot become that in a non-defining relative clause. I saw Jane, who looked very happy. Now here, we're not adding extra information to the sentence. We've only got a small half the part of the punctuation. What we're doing instead is extending the sentence. So we didn't just see Jane, we're giving more information about Jane herself. And again, who in a non-defining relative clause cannot become that. I went to London where my parents fell in love to buy some paintings. So this time we're using where to describe what happened in the location. We're not describing London the thing, but we're describing the place where something happened. So in that way, this sentence is a little bit different from the first sentence we looked at. As you can see here, we're adding information to the sentence. The original sentence could be, I went to London to buy some paintings. And instead, we've included some extra information by using the punctuation after the place that we want to describe, and the relative clause, and then another comma, to make it clear to the person you're writing to that you've added extra information. I'm always bored at Christmas time when English families get together, so I don't like it. And again, we're describing Christmas as the time. And again, the sentence could read, I'm always bored at Christmas, so I don't like it. But we've added some extra information with punctuation. He's a brilliant singer whose albums are not well known, and I saw him singing last week. So again, this time we're describing the singer, and we're describing the albums from the singer by using the non-defining relative clause, including punctuation, an extra sentence within a sentence to give more information. Non-defining relative clause typically are used in reading and writing, but you can also use them in speaking as well. Another feature of relative clauses, defining and non-defining relative clauses, is in sentences where you could use them, but you don't. Now, for example, New York is a city located in America. As you can see here, there is no which telling the person you're talking to or writing to specifically what New York is, but the information is contained in the sentence. So we could say New York, which is a city located in America, but we don't need to. We just remove the which. Now this can be confusing, but what you've got to remember is native speakers like to save time, so often they remove it. And sometimes when we're studying grammar points like this, the reason is for your receptive skills. When you see it, you will understand. She's the woman staying in the hotel nearby. So as you can see here, we haven't used who to define who the woman is, but instead we've changed the verb to ing form. So instead of saying she's the woman who stays in the hotel nearby, we've just removed the who and added ing to the verb. The meaning is exactly the same. It's the time of day when I always have a cup of tea. So here we've removed when. The meaning of the sentence is exactly the same because from the context the meaning is clear. It's a place where you can play football in. So again, we're not specifying the location with a relative clause because based on the information we have, it's very clear. He's the man with crazy dogs. So this time, we're not using whose to describe the fact that he possesses them. And in fact, we've replaced it with the preposition with, because that information is all contained in the sentence. And by including with, we don't actually need whose. And like I've said before, don't worry too much if you're not feeling very confident about doing this yourself. This is more about noticing information and understanding the alternatives available to you. So in this lesson, we've looked at relative clauses. We've looked at how we use defining relative clauses to say specifically what or who or describing possessions exactly. Then we looked at non-defining relative clauses. That is using words like which, where, when, who to add sentences within sentences or to extend sentences by using punctuation as well as the relative clause. Finally, we've looked at how we can remove relative clauses from sentences, and the meaning of the sentence doesn't change, but certain details do. Now, as usual, you will take the exercises which follow this lesson. Good luck.